To be honest, my favourite subject at school was, it's called technical drawing, which was like designing things and cross-referencing them. And the reason I liked it is because it wasn't to do with words. I struggled with reading a lot when I was younger, and I liked technical drawing because it didn't involve the use of words, because I was quite intimidated by words, mainly because I didn't read for pleasure. And until I started reading for pleasure, subjects like English, history, etc. were a big struggle for me. So I liked stuff like technical drawing and obviously sports as well. But then once I got into reading for pleasure through football, I became much more comfortable with those subjects. It was gradual through sort of 12, 13, 14, 15, not really confidently reading until I was like after I'd left school at 15. And then it all went a bit wrong, and then I went to night school later on when I was 18, 19 to do A-levels. So it was a gradual thing through my teens, I suppose. Yeah. I think one of the problems is with what you are given to read, what children are given to read, and what they're told about what they're reading. So like the comic books and magazines and reading about football is okay. Whatever your hobby is, whatever you love, read about that, and that'll bring you pleasure. You don't, they're great authors, but like Philip Pullman, Jacqueline Wilson, etc. If you don't like their books, there's nothing wrong with you. It doesn't matter if you want to read Match magazine or something like that. It's positive. And I had that whole vibe that I wasn't a proper reader, but actually gradually I was a proper reader, because I was reading about what I loved in and not in books, and particularly fiction. Even though I write fiction, I'd say some children just can't be doing with fiction. And I find particularly, I don't know about girls versus boys, but men, friends of mine who are men, they can't buy into fiction. And I think that might be reflected in some boys as well, that it has to be real. So fact books, non-fiction, should be celebrated as well. And I've been in a school, I was in a school in Hull a couple of years ago, and they said, the teacher, after my whole session, they said, when are you going to write proper books? Like I was writing football books, that football books weren't proper books. So there are a lot of prejudices around, but I do have to say, having been working in schools for 15 years, I think that's changed. I think the idea of reading for pleasure has opened up, certainly in the UK anyway, and probably everywhere else too, hopefully. I prefer books just because I like it. I enjoy reading a book. I do read on Kindle or other available, and you can through the library obviously as well, and you can borrow an ebook. But if I need it quickly for work and research, I'll get it. I'll get it on as an ebook quickly and read it. Or if it's significantly more expensive, I think it's great. I mean, if you can use other technology to make reading easier, or to make access to reading easier, I think it's brilliant. And people always see it as like competition, don't they, for books? But books, like children's books, are, as far as I know, if you ignore the COVID blip, selling as well as or better than they ever have. And even though like children have got all these devices, I think once you start shutting things off and saying you must do this, it's advanced, it's technology, isn't it? And things advance, things change, and anyone who tries to resist change, if books tried to resist change, they'd die out. Technology, if you like as a writer, technology is amazing, because like I can use a word processor and just cut and paste, and I don't have to rewrite things 1,000 times, because I do edit like dozens of times. And research is amazing. I can sort of go to the village I'm writing about in Holland, and I can go right down and look at the streets and walk down the street as if I'm there, because I can't go there because of COVID. So my dad was writing a book just before he died, and he was cutting and pasting literally like with bits of paper and sticking them on. And his research, you'd have to visit a library in Liverpool to find something out about Liverpool. I can do it in 5 minutes like that, and it's great. I try to go like to as close as you can to a primary source, so to the testimony of those people involved, so Holocaust survivors, men who fought in the trenches, Or some of my books include storylines about refugees today. So I will listen to interviews with refugees. I will read books that have come out and go right to the horse's mouth, or the primary source, or the testimony of your character. I mean, there's a lot of stuff online, but for me, like especially with the First and Second World War, the Imperial War Museum website, you can go on it and you can listen to men and women who've been involved in all the different conflicts in countries all around the world, from the army, the navy, the air force, etc. And you can home it down to your hometown. You could home it down to when any three of us are sitting, and those places would be covered. And I just find that really useful. And I will start with this one, Arctic Star. That comes up, it does. That I listened to about 100 hours of sailors talking about what it was like being on the Arctic convoys, and I pulled out what I wanted to use in the story. And it's time consuming, but I like it, so it doesn't matter. If you're writing a story about a Holocaust survivor, if you're writing about them, you have a duty to tell their story properly and not to corrupt their story. If I'm telling people about that's Jewish boys from Poland in 1945, if I make up a load of nonsense, as some writers do, about the Holocaust, if you invent stuff that is disrespectful to those people, some of the people I base this book on are still alive, and their families are alive. And if you tell their story, you misrepresent another country, another group of people, and you tell their story in the wrong way, you'd be appalled, wouldn't you, if you read it? You want things to be told properly and so that people understand what did happen. There's loads of cliches about the Nazis and the Holocaust, and you absolutely have to tell it straight, otherwise it's wrong. I like it because if you bring in two or three strands and weave them together, it makes it original, doesn't it? I suppose I'm trying to think of so this is like, this D-Day dog is from the point of view of a boy who's on a school trip to Normandy in France, learning about D-Day, learning about a young man and his dog who parachuted in on D-Day, but it's also tying in a Falklands veteran recently come from Syria because her country wasn't liberated. And so we think about, wasn't it glorious and wonderful that the British, Americans and Canadians and others liberated France and then Europe from the Nazis, but it ties into, we intervened in countries like Afghanistan and Iraq, and we didn't intervene in Syria, and like the character in here, she wished that we had, whereas but there's no right answer because it's a nightmare either way, isn't it? And just exploring stuff like that and looking at the D-Day invasion and comparing it to a Western Allied invasion now in the modern day is just really interesting. And for children, makes them realize that war and refugees and bombing and horror is not in the primitive past. It's right now and it's tomorrow as well, and they need to think about it. I sort of talk to people, I'll try and get it right, so I think about what I've done before and feedback I've had before. I try and be honest, but not too horrific. But then I'll try it out, like I tried after the war out on a group of children in the Lake District in England, and they told me what they liked and what they didn't like, and that was a really important time. It was a group of 10 and 11-year-olds who read the book about the Holocaust, about Holocaust survivors. We don't want to be horrified and shocked and disgusted, but we want to know what was a death march, what was a concentration camp, what was a ghetto, why did the Germans and go along with Hitler, and why did other countries go along with it? And they wanted the facts, and so I laid the facts out there quite clearly, but without making it too brutal. And you can go so far with children, I think, and I do that by showing friends who are teachers as well, and by showing children too. One of my books is set in Ghana, and it's about a young footballer who is trafficked to Europe, and his parents are cocoa bean farmers, so it's also about fair trade. And I went out of my way to go to football academies in Ghana, went to watch matches, met young footballers in Ghana. I was too scared to do it at the beginning. I think I made mistakes sort of in stuff I was writing, or I shied away from writing about things. I was lucky, I suppose. I approached people who could help me through people I knew. So I asked someone I knew who knew someone who was involved in football in Ghana, and they helped me. So going to someone through a friend, and then things are always a bit more amiable, aren't they? So I suppose there was that. But it took me years to be, and I think back to things I'd written when I was younger, like I wish I'd been braver. But you're not, are you, when you're at the beginning of something? You learn how to deal with things, and you get braver. So what I'd say is do it bit by bit. You can't do it all in one weekend, but you can gradually push yourself and be more brave with what you're trying to do, with what you read or write or research, and gradually you become stronger at coping with those sort of situations. But it's not easy. I still feel shy about it, but I want the book to be good, so I think, well, I'm not going to be shy. I'm just going to push myself into, like I was the first time I met a Holocaust survivor two or 3 years ago, I was really nervous because I didn't want to ask something stupid. I didn't want to use up and waste his time. But by the end of the conversation, he was, thank you for telling our story. We're old people now, and soon we won't be here, and someone needs to keep telling the story. And so I went from feeling shy and grateful and to him saying thank you, which is crazy, isn't it? But that's people like it. People want, if you're respectful and they trust you, people want to have their story told, whether they're footballers in Ghana or Holocaust survivors in Leeds. So generally, I mean, like that website, the Imperial War Museum website, is amazing. In COVID times, if you're interested in history, I'd go there. It's an amazing resource. But I mean, personally, I'd say visit Yorkshire because that's where I live. And visit, like, London's amazing, but it's all, I mean, London's great because it's all there, isn't it? But it's all very sort of set up as an experience for you, and you go to the museums and you see the buildings, and it's made for tourists. Whereas I suppose when I'm going to another country, although I like going to the capitals and seeing all that, I like to go to out of the way places and just see what countries, like another country, is like from the little villages or the places away from the tourist area or the big cities with the the famous buildings. I like to go to, like when I was doing the Ghana book, I went to a school like right out in the middle of nowhere that it was like 2 planes and a bus ride to get to, and it was amazing. And I would never have seen that in the capital city or within the grounds of this relatively posh hotel I was staying in. You have to go out and see stuff and meet people, and once they realize what you're doing, they love it, and they really want to, generally they want to tell you about their country and what they're proud of and their lives, and that really helps you when you're trying to write a story about people.